The other question I was going to address with Cardinal Burke, just because it relates to canon law somewhat, would be interested in your perspective on this. So we agree that sacred liturgy is important to Catholic higher education, but we also know that it is not necessarily, at least its importance and beauty, are not necessarily appreciated in all respects in many of our Catholic colleges and universities. At a Catholic college or university, the chaplain or the campus ministry staff is responsible for the liturgical life, but so is the local bishop. In Ex Corde Ecclesiae, the Apostolic Constitution on Catholic universities, it says, quote, "A sufficient number of qualified people, priests, religious, and laypersons are to be appointed to provide pastoral ministry for the university community, carried on in harmony and cooperation with the pastoral activities of the local church, under the guidance or with the approval of the diocesan bishop." And Canon 813 says, quote, "The diocesan bishop is to have earnest pastoral care for students, even by erecting a parish, or at least by designating priests stably for this, and is to make provision that at universities, even non-Catholic ones, there are Catholic university centers which give assistance, especially spiritual assistance, to youth." Now, I find something intriguing about the phrase in there where they say even non-Catholic universities. It's not that today that there's much surprise that diocese bishops are responsible for pastoral ministry at non-Catholic institutions. We have a long history of Newman centers, what we call campus ministries today. But what's surprising is that the way that that's worded as a parenthetical phrase, even at non-Catholic institutions, is that it suggests that the bishop's role in naming priests to campus ministry at Catholic colleges should be the norm. Nevertheless, today campus ministry at most Catholic colleges and universities is often highly independent of the bishop and is structured as an office of the institution instead of an apostolate of the diocese. The liturgical practices at these centers can often differ significantly from what occurs in the local parishes. And so my question, what are the options, or ought to be the options, for a bishop who wants to help improve the liturgy at Catholic colleges within his diocese, assuming that those colleges are legally independent of the diocese, they're not diocesan-owned institutions? Can the bishop assert his authority over a campus ministry and require improvements in the liturgy, in part by assigning or approving chaplains and campus ministers of his choosing? And how might diocesan resources, seminaries, liturgical institutes, parishes be used to help form those who are engaged in Catholic campus ministry?
Easy question to start with. There's a saying that personnel is policy, and I think that a lot of bishops, they're in the situation of having very limited resources with their priests, and so sometimes they just want to try to plug priests in wherever they can. But precisely because the young people who are being formed in the university setting are the leaders of the future, that there has to be forward thinking in investing your best men in those positions. At the same time, though, I think in the formation of seminarians and priests, knowing that they're going to go into these university settings, there also has to be a great sense of prudence and diplomacy. I know that there are some places in which the universities have college chaplaincies, and they're like, well, y'all Catholics do your thing, and you go do your thing in this room that we'll give you. But then there's other places in which they can be very combative and very difficult, particularly on questions affecting morality. And so then you have to have priests who are very prudent and they understand kind of the world of academia and who can kind of maneuver through all of that. But also knowing that the bishop has the back of the priest, and also making sure that the people who are involved in campus ministry, you may have something that's already pre-existing, which is kind of a mixed bag. You want to affirm what is good, and then what isn't. Sometimes you're not in a place where you can say, okay, well, let's do the scorched earth policy and get rid of all these heretics or whatever it is from the place, and say, okay, let's put lots of good people, start putting them into position or training. A lot of times you have young people who they love the church, they love campus ministry, they want to volunteer. Let the diocese give them a good formation so that they can be that kind of invisible salt, which starts making things happen. But with a view to longevity and a view to really making things happen over a period of time.
Thank you. I think this question is extremely difficult, fraught with difficulties, because I've seen in my life, I've seen both situations, namely where a very strong Orthodox bishop with the right ideas on liturgy has wanted to improve situations. And I've also seen cases where liberal or progressive bishops, not to mince words, where they actually would like to interfere to take things in the wrong direction. And therefore, it seems to me just a very delicate relationship, how you work that out. We're talking about private Catholic institutions. I think obviously a cordial fraternal relationship is very important, but I think the college or university needs to have a very clear set of guidelines about what they're looking for in their chaplaincy, and hopefully be able to persuade the bishop that this is a good thing to have, let's say, to have Gregorian chant, or only men serving at the altar, or the extraordinary form, or these are the sorts of things that we've developed because we had the support of our founding bishop, and that was extremely important. Now we can look back and say, granted, that bishop's, what he thought and what he implemented can't bind any of his successors, but at least it's a precedent, and the more years pass, the more of a precedent it is. I still don't think that there's an easy solution to this, because it can go in both directions.
Listening to these testimonies reminds me of the importance of procedure and having right procedures, but also B, the danger in emphasizing their importance too much. One of the hallmarks of liberalism, broadly defined in terms of a modern philosophy, is that it makes an idol of proceduralism. As long as we have the right procedure, justice is being done, is the assumption of classical liberalism. I think we need to be on guard against that in the church. We have a large bureaucracy, so procedures are necessary, but genuine renewal won't come through them.